do right here is go back. Way back. Back into time.
We can rebuild him. We have the technology.
Celebrating 20 years of New England Championship Wrestling. This is the Regeneration Podcast.
And now, here are your hosts, Sheldon Goldberg, Joe Matterazzo, and Kevin Castro.
Welcome everyone to episode 11 of the Regeneration Podcast. Sheldon Goldberg here, along with Joe Matterazzo. Hi, Joe.
Hello, how are you today?
And I'm fine. Kevin Castro is with us as well, as always.
Happy holidays to everyone. Happy holidays, you guys.
Happy holidays to all of our great listeners. Happy holidays to all of our fans. We want to wish you a safe, happy, and wonderful holiday, and we're going to wrap up the year with kind of a freewheeling episode. I've asked Joe and Kevin to basically grill me about all things NECW. All things that maybe should have been expanded on but weren't expanded on in the last 10 episodes. Things about the 20th anniversary collection. Things about the company in general and its history. So I'm going to put the episode basically in your hands. I will tell you that we do have a bonus match coming up. And that match is from July 7th, 2015. Alexxis Neveah taking on Sonya Strong. And that is a very interesting match. And the episode that originally aired on has, to this date, close to 60,000 views on YouTube.
Wow.
Yeah. So we're going to take a look at that match. You'll see why it got all the attention that it got, and we'll discuss that in depth a little bit later in the broadcast. All right, so it's all on you guys. You can feel free to turn up the heat and grill me on anything you want to grill me on, and Joe, will start with you.
Sure. Well, I mean, let's. We basically have touched on the fact that in the beginning, when you got involved, you were working for Tony Rumble for Century Wrestling,
right?
And from that point, after the passing of Tony, where did you go from there? Did you do something in between? Did you stay with Century Wrestling? Did you try to keep it going, or did you come up with New England Championship Wrestling right afterwards?
What happened was, after Tony passed away, his widow had decided to put the company in the hands of Jeff Katz and Knuckles Nelson. It was kind of a surprise, because the people who really did the most with the company, other than Tony himself, were Pat Doyle, who was basically Tony's Brian Nadeau. He produced and directed the television, and myself, who I did the website, I did all the posters and the tickets and all that other stuff, and I had my own business selling merchandise, which is how I paid myself. So when they put the company in the hands of Knuckles and Jeff Katz, and I want to, a lot of time has passed, and I've made up with those guys. There's no heat between us anymore. But at the time, I think they had a different expectation of what they were getting into than what reality was. They were false advertising people. They weren't really. I didn't see that going the way Tony Rumble would have run the company, and I bowed out. And I bowed out basically after one show. I just felt that it wasn't going to go anywhere. You couldn't follow Tony Rumble. He was sort of an impossible kind of a personality to imitate or duplicate. He couldn't be imitated or duplicated. So it would be better off going its own way. Pat Doyle did not want to continue without Tony. He and Tony were very close. And without Tony in the picture, he didn't think it was going to go anywhere. And he bowed out. I stuck it out just a little bit longer, and when I saw what they were going to do business-wise, I was out. There was no way that was going to be successful. And in fact, what had happened was Jeff Katz left the area for a radio job, and Knuckles kind of got tired of doing this to give the money to Tony's widow. So it ended up where Jason Rumble took the company over and basically ran it for Ellen. And he continued on as NWA New England. But I started NECW 6 months after Tony passed away. And the impetus for doing that was a conversation I had with Scott Dickinson, who I was very good friends with at the time. And Scott says, well, why don't you start something up? And I really thought about it. And it was one of those things where I had no designs on being a wrestling promoter. My thing was helping Tony run that business. And, the idea of me being in charge of anything wasn't in the cards, at least at that particular time. But once events happened the way they happened, I said to myself, if I don't try this, I'm going to regret it for the rest of my life. And so here we are 20 years later, and I'm still working on it. So
There you go.
So there you go. That's basically how NECW got started.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, there's actually a little bit more to it. There were some other people that were disaffected. There was a guy named Michael Breen who had was working with us selling shows in Connecticut. And how we got started was he sold a few shows, a series of shows that I ended up taking over with him, and that's how NECW got started. So we started by doing some sold shows in Connecticut at a place called the Fun Zone in Wethersfield, Connecticut. It's no longer there. It was like an arcade, very similar to Good Times, but smaller. Then we got into Good Times a little later that year, and off we went from there.
What was your original vision of what NECW was going to be? Were you thinking just doing sold shows? Were you thinking running regularly, monthly, weekly?
No, I thought about running as we had run, monthly shows. I wanted to do a circuit of towns. That proved to be far more difficult than I had banked on. I thought we were going to be able to line up, a series of towns and run a circuit. That was a lot easier said than it was done. Very difficult working with local promoters. But no, we did. We ran regular shows. We did have sold shows. That was something that we were able to get, sometimes through other people, sometimes with the help of Michael Breen, but sometimes they came in from outside. There was a guy that we were friendly with who was running up in Vermont by the name of Gary Langevin. He had a company called Green Mountain Wrestling. And Gary brought me a show at Vermont Technical College. We ran 2 shows up there. He didn't know how to do a sold show, and me, having been around Tony, and Tony was the king of sold shows, at least I had an idea of how it went. So we did those, and we kind of commissioned Gary on those, and that's basically how we get started. So we just got the ball rolling from there. Good Time Emporium was a very key thing in really getting us going, because when we got into Good Time Emporium, a couple of things happened. There was a guy that I knew who was running not MMA shows, but he was like karate tournaments, and he had a deal with Budweiser. Good Time Emporium at that time was the largest volume seller as a bar of Budweiser product in New England.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
So as part of that, Budweiser would do things for Good Time Emporium. They would get those big banners that had the Budweiser logo on them and provide them, for different promotions and things they would do. They would sponsor different projects. They had music. They had a nightclub that they ran music acts. They sponsored that. And this guy put me in touch with the guy who was in charge over at Anheuser-Busch, and August A. Busch is the local distributor, and which is owned by Budweiser, and said, hey, this guy will do something for you if you sit down with him. So sure enough, they did. And they became our sponsors at Good Time Emporium. Not only did we get the banners and, swag to give away and things of that nature, but they bought advertising for us. Initially, they bought advertising for us on WAAF, and then WAAF we had a problem with because Chaotic Wrestling had bought time on WAAF, and they complained that they were doing stuff with us. So they tried to torpedo that deal, and what happened was Budweiser was really pissed off that they torpedoed some things that they had agreed to do. So they hooked us up with WBCN, which was a much better sponsor for us, and they did a bunch of things for us. So
much better fit, right?
Yeah, it was a much better fit. So yeah, but that was a big thing. You know, that really was part of the effort to give us the credibility to continue and put us on the map. So that was that relationship with Good Time Emporium and Budweiser by association really helped get NECW going locally.
So speaking of Good Times, is that probably your favorite building in the 20 years that you've run?
Wow, that's an excellent question. It was a great place to run wrestling because it sort of promoted itself. One of the things that they did there that was interesting is they would show all the WWF and WCW pay-per-views.
Yes.
They'd charge like a $5 cover, and people would sit there and they'd buy food and drinks and whatever, and they'd watch their pay-per-views. And it was a perfect opportunity for us to promote our shows. So every time they had a pay-per-view that they were showing, I'd come down, either myself or with a couple of other people, and hand out flyers for our next show. And just having posters up in the building was promotion for our events. And of course, with the help of Budweiser and outside stuff and the publicity that we were doing, it was fairly effective. I missed that place because I knew the people there, and it was like one big happy family over there. So they were great to work with. A lot of other people tried to get in there. Some did get in there for odd shows, but we're the ones that had a really strong relationship. Tony Rumble had a strong relationship with Good Time Emporium. That was the genesis of that. Jason had been running there as NWA New England, but they weren't terribly happy with him. They had some issues with the damages that were done to the place, a couple of breakage situations that they were not happy with. I was able to pitch to them, and because I had a good relationship with them, and they knew that I had gotten them good publicity in the past, that we'd be responsible operators, and that's how we got in there. So we didn't get them thrown out. We never get anybody thrown out, but we had a strong enough relationship with them that we were able to do stuff there on a regular basis. So, and that was a key to helping us get our legs under us. But as far as favorite venues, let me break it down like this. Good Times was a great venue. It wasn't exactly the perfect venue in terms of a wrestling atmosphere. I think the best venue that we've ever run as far as a wrestling atmosphere would be the Quincy Armory. Just the way it was lit, it had a great presence and atmosphere to it. It had a long history with wrestling. Again, not a perfect building as far as that goes. I liked the Cove Community Center in Beverly, which was a little building. It wasn't a very big place, but it had a stage, it had a balcony, it held maybe about 150 or so people with a ring in it. But once we got it lit up a little bit, it looked really good on TV for TV tapings. It was a great little venue.
Just an odd location.
Odd location. It was in a residential neighborhood, in a rather Tony residential neighborhood. So it wasn't exactly like Quincy or the Everett Rec Center, which is more a working class. That's more like the home of wrestling fans.
Right.
Whereas Beverly, not so much. But we did do some strong houses there, especially in the beginning. We did quite a number of strong houses there. The problem is it was just limited in size. But as far as atmosphere goes, when that building was packed, it was good. It was really good. One of the best venues I've ever been in New England, we never ran it as a company, but up in Littleton, New Hampshire, the Littleton Opera House. Great venue. You can spit into Canada from Littleton, New Hampshire. Kidding. Yeah, it's way up there, up past the Dixville Notch. Great venue for wrestling. Holds maybe 600-700 people.
Nice, perfect.
With balcony, just beautiful building, historic building. Steve Bradley ran that building, and just a gem of a place. And nothing goes up there. So in the early going for Steve, he was packing that place and knocking it out. But Steve's issue was he hot-shotted everything. So, it lasted for a while until, he kind of burnt it out with the hot-shotting of stuff. But
right.
But no, those were my favorite venues. I mean, we've had other places that we've run on an individual basis, like South Middle School, the gym there. That was always a packed house and a great crowd and a lot of atmosphere and so forth. But as far as regular venues, Good Times and Quincy were the two best.
So now, starting in 2000,
yep,
you figure in the world of pro wrestling, the Monday Night Wars were still going on. WCW was basically losing the war, on the verge of closing down, or being bought out.
Right.
ECW, the same thing. On the local scene, there were tons of overnight promotions popping up all over the place.
Right.
So now, with so many different companies in the area, how difficult was it to find venues and to try to establish a roster when everybody's basically attempting to use the exact same people in the exact same areas, trying to get into the exact same buildings?
Well, those have always been issues for us from day one. You know, New England has had a history of promoters who have burned buildings. There was a time when you
figuratively, not literally.
No, right. Figuratively.
just right.
Let's
clarify that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Thank you for that clarification. We're not talking arson here. We're talking about not, damaging the place or stiffing people and stuff like that. So, Rocky Raymond, a name that we know and loathe here in New England. It was a time in New England when you could not rent an armory in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts because Rocky Raymond had soured the National Guard on allowing wrestling in any armory in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Rocky had tons of buildings that he ran at one point in time, and they never wanted wrestling in there ever again. Bob Evans was another one that would get a place, and there'd be a problem financially. This was before Bob worked for me. I tried to keep my relationships with buildings good, because if you don't have buildings, you can't run. So, you've got to maintain those relationships. So that was difficult. As far as the other side of that question about the talent, that also was an issue, because it was monkey see, monkey do. Anytime we would do something, somebody would turn around and try to copy it. Use the exact same people, doing the exact same things. In the early going, Chaotic Wrestling had started up just after us, and they went through that period where they introduced exclusive contracts, which the owner the owners, there's three people that owned it. Originally it was Randy Miller, Jamie Jamakowski, or as I call him, Jamie Jam It Up Yurkowski. We'll get to him later. And there was another guy, I think his name was Mark Beaudry, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, there were three trust fund babies. And only one of them, Miller, I believe, was involved with a backyard wrestling group that was called Chaotic World Wrestling. And he actually paid money for the name, and that's what became Chaotic Wrestling. And they thought they were going to be the third national company, and they were going to take over the world, and they were going to do this and do that, and they were going to put me out of business. They had made a deal to get all of Kowalski's guys. They actually took over Kowalski's school eventually. It didn't happen at first. What happened was Mike Hollow, who was running the school for Walter, had made a deal to work with Chaotic and become their booker, and then they siphoned off all the guys, many of whom we were using, who left us without notice. So that was an issue, not something that we didn't survive, and because they couldn't book everybody, but no, they thought that they were going to take over the world, and they did actually blatantly say, we're going to put you out of business. They went after all my buildings. They went after the guys. Rich Palladino, who I was good friends with, he ring announced for Tony Rumble, and then was ring announcing for us. Basically, they signed up Rich, and he ratted on everything that we were doing. I was close with Rich. I was, bouncing all of my ideas of what we were going to do, and buildings and places and things, all the details of what we were going to do, I bounced off of Rich, and he ratted all that stuff out then. So the guy started calling him Snitch Palladino. So yeah, it was a big disappointment. Anytime somebody says to you, "Oh, I want to put you out of business," that's a big fuck you. They didn't put us out of business. It was a waste of time on their part and a waste of money. They wasted a lot of money. At one point in time, I was told that they had gone through $1 million.
I had heard that
signing
too.
people up and making bad deals, paying too much for television. They actually kept a lot of people off of TV because they went and they paid too much money. Whereas when Tony Rumble was on TV on WNDS, he didn't pay for it at all. That was a barter. So they turned around and said, "How much money do you want? Here." But no, they were a pain in the ass, and there's a lot more I could get into about Chaotic Wrestling, but they were the big offender when it came to, "Oh, we're going to put you out of business, and we're going to do this to you and that to you," and they did actually do some things that could have been considered tampering. So
wow,
yeah.
Were there any promoters that were in the area that you got along with? That you not so much got along with, but actually had working relations with? Or was everybody pretty much out for themselves at that point?
Everyone was pretty much out for themselves, but there were people that I was friendly with. Mike Sparta. I never, business-wise, I never had a beef with Mike Sparta. I didn't know Eugenio at all. When Steve Ricard took over, I knew Steve because Steve had done some stuff with Tony Rumble. He and Tony had a little falling out over some tapes.
He used to do a lot of videotaping.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
But I never had any crosswords with Steve Ricard. We were doing our thing in our place, and he was doing his thing in his place, and we weren't bothering each other. I mean, we weren't necessarily collaborating, but we weren't bothering with each other either. So
right. The area was big enough. He had his zone, you had yours.
Exactly.
Everyone had their own turf.
Right. The biggest challenge in that period for me as a promoter was credibility. And by credibility, I mean independent wrestling, such as we know it now, back in those days was a relatively new thing. The territories had disappeared. Kowalski had his regular spot shows, and that was kind of drying up because of the Attitude Era. Tony Rumble was the same thing. Tony Rumble was a lot of spot shows. Although he did promote shows, he would often promote shows off of the spot shows. So, for example, if he sold a show for a lot of money, he'd run a promoted show and keep the names over for another night. So he'd make a deal with, say, Public Enemy to be in for 2 nights instead of 1. And he'd get Good Time Emporium, or he'd rent another building somewhere. And he'd try to, double the effectiveness of it. And oftentimes that worked. Sometimes it didn't, but many times it did work. So, I learned a lot of things from Tony Rumble. His whole method of doing business was basically what I patterned my method of business. For example, Tony never owned a ring. And I never owned a ring. He always rented a ring from somebody. He dealt mostly in sold shows, promoted shows off of the sold shows, but that was drying up. And one of the reasons that I started NECW doing it the way that I did it, with putting the emphasis on local guys, is precisely for that reason, because in the Attitude Era, the access to names was getting fewer and fewer. WCW was hot. You couldn't get any of them. Although Tony had a great relationship with Kevin Sullivan, so Kevin would come up. He'd have certain guys that would come up now and then, like, Public Enemy or Bundy, who wasn't on contract anywhere, or Honky Tonk Man or Tito Santana or whatever. The Jimmy Snuka, the usual suspects, as I like to say.
Right.
But that whole model of doing business at that time was drying up. So we were trying to create something different with making the local guys the stars, and the way we were trying to get credibility for that was just doing a lot of publicity, doing a lot of PR, sending out press releases, trying to get people to discover it for what it was. And it was a hard road to go, but we did it, and a lot of people copied us because it was easy to copy. Guys.
Yeah, your overhead is low.
Yeah, overhead was low. And the other thing too is, guys say, "Oh well, he's doing it with no names. I can do the same thing." So many times, you'd end up seeing the same people doing the same stuff for another promoter. So that was hard, and it remained hard through the years. We do something, especially when we were running in Quincy, and that was hot. You'd see these guys do these one-off shows, and they'd book the guys that we were using, often against us on the same night.
Yeah.
So,
I remember that.
Right.
Yep.
I don't know if I remember if I told the story about Bobby Fish, how we had done basically a year-long program with Bobby Fish and Eddie Edwards. We had them in the Iron 8 in Brockton, and Fish breaks his ankle. Legit, at the end of the match. So we're building up when Fish comes back to have them face off against each other at the next Iron 8, with the plan being that Bobby Fish would get his revenge on Eddie Edwards. So in the interim, some guy who had been one of our fans, who had been coming to our shows religiously, decides he's going to be a wrestling promoter, and he loves Bobby Fish, and he's going to book Bobby Fish the same night as our Iron 8. So we're trying to, book this thing, and Bobby Fish says, well, I want a double shot. Well, no, because you're going to be tied up the whole night. Now, Bobby Fish didn't know that the plan was for him to go over, but the Iron 8 is basically it's a night-long commitment. So this guy who had never promoted anything was paying him stupid money, and we said to him, look, we can't pay you that, but we're going to book you consistently. We have booked you consistently. We've given you promo time. We've done all this stuff with you. Oh no, I need the money. I've got to go. I need the money. Job me out in the first round. Well, that's what we ended up doing against our better judgment. And as it turned out, this guy ran just the one show and then basically tanked after that night. So we would have situations like that would happen, now and then. There was a fairly regular occurrence with somebody popping up and running a show and trying to do the same thing with the same guys. So it was frustrating. But, we had established ourselves as a brand name. We were putting out video content. There wasn't YouTube at that time, but we were putting it out online. We were making our moves to develop ourselves to be a strong, content creating property, and a long road towards doing that. I got to jump back for a second. Kevin, you had brought up 2000 and the end of WCW and so forth. Here's an interesting fact that I hadn't had a chance to tell you about, is that when Eric Bischoff was trying to buy WCW from Turner, there were discussions between he and I about us becoming part of whatever his new company was going to be, to make some sort of an arrangement where we would be funded by them and be a situation where we would essentially be a developmental operation for them. When Bischoff didn't get the company, those discussions ended, but he was very open to that idea. And I've always been fond of Eric Bischoff because he was there to listen. He sought me out and wanted to talk about something like that. So I would have really, really been thrilled if we could have made some sort of a deal. Of course, it wasn't to be, but that was very much something that was on the table at that particular time. A lot of people don't know that.
So you've known Eric a long time then?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
How did you go about meeting him? How did you meet Eric?
I was writing columns for OneWrestling.com, and I happened to mention that, if Eric Bischoff was listening, I would certainly like to talk to him about something like this. And sure enough, he reached out to me.
Wow.
Now, don't forget that I had done those specials for the A&E network. The
That's
Unreal
right.
Story of Professional Wrestling and Andre the Giant, Larger Than Life, for biography. So people knew who I was. I was, I had a fair amount of notoriety at that time, which was something else that helped the credibility of NECW at that particular point in time. All these little things added up towards, making NECW a credible operation. It was a shoestring operation for sure. I mean, we barely had a pot to piss in, but we were doing things that were trying to build credibility for us, and many of them were very effective.
So now, who would you say is your MVP in the ring as well as behind the scenes?
Wow.
Doesn't have to be the same person, but if you had to pick an MVP for each location.
Each location meaning Good Time Emporium, or...
No, I just mean...
in or out of the ring, I'm sorry.
A performer and office.
As far as performer goes, Sean Gorman. I think we've gone over that many times.
Yeah.
As far as adding value to the company, and we in the 20th anniversary collection, we've seen the importance of Sean Gorman, and how no one really matched him in terms of his effectiveness, particularly in the role that he was in. Office-wise, Brian Nadeau, yourself, Kev, Joe, the three of you guys, Paul Richard too.
That wasn't me fishing, by the way. Just so you know.
No.
I wasn't throwing that out there because I would agree that if I had to pick one person, that Brian would definitely.
I'd say Brian myself too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
as an MVP,
right? I mean, really, you can't understate his role, and if you see the footage, just not so much the level of the content and the talent and all that, but the quality of the production and the quality of everything before Brian and after Brian, it's like night and day.
It is.
The quality of what was being produced definitely ratcheted up once Brian was involved. So he's very important. I couldn't have done the television that we did, both for Comcast On Demand and later for WMFP, without Brian. Had he not been involved, none of that would have taken place. But so he was very, very instrumental in everything. The Mouthpiece Wrestling Show wouldn't have taken hold without you, Joe. And that proved to be a very important thing for NECW. Kevin, you were just a godsend in terms of helping me book and manage the talent, particularly for that WMFP run. Without you doing that, I don't think it would have fallen apart. So, I was blessed with the three of you guys. Absolutely. No question. And no, I didn't think you were fishing. But.
So, to follow up on just the WMFP, the comparisons between those shows and the Comcast, or the Comcast On Demand, what are your thoughts on those?
Night and day. And I'll tell you why. We had, by the time WMFP came around, we had a lot of experience. Brian and myself. When we went on Comcast On Demand, we were doing an hour. And then my associates, in their infinite lack of wisdom, decided to just cut it to a half hour because they didn't want to do the work to do the content. But the situation that we were in when we got on WMFP was we were basically doing just about a show a month, sometimes more, if we had sold shows or whatever. So to lessen the strain of creating a lot of content, and because the cost of buying the airtime was so cheap, we just did a half hour from the start. And we kind of figured out how we could make a half hour work. And that was really good. Believe it or not, while ideally you'd want to do an hour, but we were only doing, in many cases, just the one show a month. So basically everything we were doing was going on TV, or most everything we were doing was going on TV. So armed with that knowledge and the experience, and don't forget, with the PWF crew, we had done hundreds of episodes of online TV. And you've seen some of that footage, and you'll be seeing more of it as time goes on, as we unearth a lot of these matches that no longer exist online. But we did hundreds of episodes. I think before we went on Comcast On Demand, we were up to like 186 episodes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of TV. Even though some of it was short, the beauty of online TV is you're not locked into any specific length of time. It can be 22 minutes one week, 34 minutes the next week, 19 minutes the week after that.
Yeah, depending on what you wanted to show.
Exactly. Yeah. Whereas on broadcast, you've got to do that half hour, or that 28, 40, 45, or whatever it turned out to be. Or if it's an hour, you got to do that 56 minutes and 30 seconds or whatever it was. So we were prepared in some respects better doing the WMFP run than we had been for the Comcast On Demand run. Now, and Comcast On Demand, we didn't have sponsors. The only thing we were pitching was we were just pitching our shows, our upcoming live events and DVD releases, whereas WMFP, we actually had sponsors. We had actually sold sponsorships to people. Not enough, but we sold enough to carry the cost of the airtime, and it looked like a television show.
Right.
It may not have been, slickly produced. It certainly wasn't WWE quality by any stretch of the imagination, but it was good local television with good stories and good talent, and it was a great showcase for local people. It's funny. This past week, I did a link on social media to the last WMFP episode that we did, which aired on Christmas Day of 2014. It was the second part of the Best of 2014, which went through all the title changes for that year. Very proud of that episode. Very proud of the way it was produced and the way it flowed and so forth. If you watch it, it's very well put together. Even though it was our last episode for broadcast, when we started doing the online stuff afterwards, you can see where the quality of the online stuff improved because of the experience that we had producing the WMFP run. Some of the graphic elements started to become better. The way it was edited and put together. I had learned a lot, just my own experience of doing the portions of the programs that I had been doing, the promos and the spots and editing match packages and things of that nature. Just having done them, I was able to get better at doing them, and that experience really shows in the later stuff. I don't know if you had a chance to take a look at that last episode yet, Joe.
No, I just got it from you, so
right.
I will be taking a chance to look at that. I do like the year-end shows that you put together. I remember doing the one, in fact, I just watched it not that long ago from 2010.
Right.
And the way we had set that up, and I had people who were not wrestling fans that jumped right in because it looked like something off of ESPN.
Mm-hmm.
And it hooked them right away. And then to go into the matches and then back again, and they liked the way that formatted. They was all formatted that way. So it'd be interesting for me to see 4 years later with a different type of show,
right?
And see what that. So on a comparison end, I'm really excited to watch that.
That 2010 final 2 episodes was interesting because I think we told the story in one of our previous podcasts about how after the split between myself and the PWF crew, that happened in November of 2010. So there were a couple of weeks of television left, and we had a contract. So they weren't going to do it. They just weren't going to submit the TV. I wanted to get it finished.
Yep.
And so I pulled Joe, who had not been around for a couple of months.
Right.
We went up to the studio that Brian was working at the time, Brian Nadeau, and the 3 of us actually put this, recap show, 2 weeks, 2 hours of all the highlights of the previous year, and we did what I felt was a great job of it. It just showed how irresponsible they were. They wanted a spot for their upcoming debut PWF show. They insisted that, but they didn't want to lift a finger to fulfill the contract that they had gotten into. that tells you a lot about what you need to know about that crew. But we left that with our heads held high, and a couple of years later we were back on TV. So, and with more and better experience in terms of doing it.
Well, that's how it should work.
Yeah.
The further you go, you'll learn from mistakes, and you'll learn and move forward. The definition of a moron is someone who keeps doing the exact same thing, expecting a different result.
Right.
And you look at the promotions that aren't there anymore, because the exact same result happened. Mm-hmm. For you guys to move on to conventional TV from on demand, mm-hmm. I mean, that's a step up. Some people would say that it was a step back because of the time slot and all that, but you went from being on demand where we were to where you and Kevin got yourselves on conventional television. Mm-hmm. How can you beat that? You know what I mean?
It was a big thing, and
and it looked great.
I don't think the talent really appreciated what it was and how big a deal it was. Some of them did, but not all of them. Kevin, I think you would agree with me when I say that.
Yeah, there was a good amount that realized the opportunity that they had, but then, right. Yeah, I fully agree with that.
It's hard for people to wrap their arms around it, but I had figured, it's a weak station, and it's a weak time slot. So we've got to figure out how we can get people to watch it. So one thing was we set it up where the minute the show went off the air, it was available on YouTube on demand. So it didn't matter. If you couldn't stay up late, you still had a way to watch it. Number two is that we put ads in the Boston Herald. We had an ad every Thursday in the Herald, in the Sports and More section. It was just a little ad. New England Championship Wrestling, tonight, 12:30 a.m., WMFP TV, blah, 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 Comcast, whatever number it was on Comcast. And we had that little ad that ran every single week. We did all kinds of things to try to get people to watch that television. And, it's funny. People would stop me on the street and say, hey, you're the guy from NECW. You rarely see me on camera, but, they knew. It was interesting, co-workers, people that I work with in my regular job, were thumbing through the channel. They had no idea. They thumbed through the channels and there it would be. And holy shit, that's Sheldon. What's he doing on TV? So, it was an accomplishment to do that every single week, 90 straight weeks, no reruns, and have a job on top of it, and promote the shows and do all the work that's involved in the pre-production and the post-production and promoting the live shows and having a life on top of it. Very, very hard to do. I don't think people realize how difficult it was to do it. I know, Brian did yeoman's work.
Oh, yeah.
Yeoman's
Absolutely.
work. I'm nuts. I'm a grinder. I just go and grind and do it because it was the only way it was going to get done.
Right.
If I didn't do it, it wasn't happening. So, and it was very, very difficult to delegate stuff to people because what are they going to do? We were not in a situation where we produced the commentary live. It had to be post-produced just because of the way that we were doing it. I personally think it worked out better that way, although I would have liked to have had a co-host. I would have liked to have done the commentary with somebody else. Logistically, because you're doing it after work, you don't know, sometimes you're doing it on the weekend. Right. You don't know when you're going to be able to do the work that needs to be done. It might happen in the middle of the night, So it's hard to coordinate with a second person to do that. I know, some people like Al Basler, who I like very much. Al Basler did a very good job with the backstage interviews. He wanted to do commentary, but logistically we couldn't do it. I would have liked to have had Al on commentary. I don't think he could have developed into a strong presence. I thought he was very good on backstage interviews. But, people get frustrated and they don't understand. We're trying to do this on a shoestring. We're trying to do this with limited resources. So instead of going along with the program and just saying, okay, well, let's just make this the best let's everybody do the best that they can do, and maybe we can parlay this into another place where we can do it differently. And some people just plain didn't understand that. And I'm not trying to single out Al. I think there are others that fall into that category as well. But, you got to crawl before you can walk in this particular instance.
So let me ask you this then. What gave you, was it always your plan to do episodic TV
Absolutely.
or episodic shows as opposed to spot shows?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, then let me follow that up. Follow that up with
Sure.
knowing what you know now. Mm-hmm. Would you still decide to do the same thing?
Absolutely.
Because of the amount of work it takes.
Because of the amount of work it takes, and the other thing is, you can't get local guys over unless you introduce them to fans and get them emotionally invested in them. It's easy to be emotionally invested in somebody you already know from some other television, but to be invested in, the guy from New Hampshire, the guy from Everett, or the guy from Revere, or whatever, you've got to get to know that person. And the only way you get to know that person is to give them angles and programs and promos and to do things that introduce those people and get you to care about who they are, who they're working against, and why. So that's pro wrestling to me. Spot shows are spot shows. And again, there's nothing wrong with spot shows, but if you're going to create a true promotion, you've got to tell stories. You've got to give people something that gives them an emotional investment in what's going on. And that, I think we did that.
Absolutely. No, I agree. And I because there's a lot of, like I said, like Kevin and I were talking about, and we were talking about the promoters and the companies that we were with before we joined NECW. Mm-hmm. And for the most part, everything that I was involved with was spot shows. The PWF crew before they were PWF were Mayhem, and that's where I got my first start, and they were trying to do episodic. They were trying to do it with angles and things with local guys. Mm-hmm. It never made it to TV. It made it to a few VHS tapes and things like that, but nothing of any substance. And then that all fell apart, and then to go work with Mike Sparta, which it was all spot shows. They were all, there'd be angles for the night, or angles for carryover for another night. Right. And then coming to NECW and seeing how it is actually put together, now you're learning the business. Right. You know what I mean? There's different styles of promotions. There's different styles of I saw two completely different opposite ends of the earth styles between you and Mark Sparta as far as how you promoted shows. And it wasn't because any one of you were better than the other. It was because they were different shows, and they were extremely different shows. It is very easy to sell a show with Kevin Nash on the marquee, or Yokozuna, or somebody that everybody knows on there. It's a totally different thing to do it from Joe Floyd from Revere and get people to want to come and see that match.
Tony Rumble had a mix of both. He had the names. He had the guys that you knew, that you saw on TV. But he had his cable access show, and he did angles and programs and tried to get people invested in some of the guys that he had. My whole thing was, I knew that the names were going to go away, that was going to become a more difficult proposition to do, and so let's go the other way. Let's get rid of all the names, and let's make the local guys the stars. You can't teach a guy to swim until you throw him in the pool. So that's and some aren't going to make it. Some are going to drown. But the ones who can tread water, some of them are going to become really good, and they're going to be effective in what they do. And in this series, you saw examples of many of those people.
And it takes a lot of trust when you're doing episodic. That the talent has to trust, us with the stories that we're trying to say. We have to trust the talent to, portray. the stories that we're trying to tell. I like you were saying, Joe. When I started out on the South Shore, we did a lot more episodic. I mean, when I first started, I want to say I was doing Friday, Saturday, and Sundays for the first 2 years.
Wow.
You know, and we would do the episodic, and then we would have the spot shows where they would bring in a name, and none of the angles that we had in the quote unquote house shows meant anything, because this was a whole different audience.
Right.
So, you know, there were times where people who were feuding episodically were now teaming together, or just different things like that. But I prefer episodic because you get to tell those stories, you get to develop those characters, you get to connect with the crowd, you get to see the excitement between the crowd getting wrapped up in the story and the excitement of the talent realizing, you know, hey, this is working. Oh, wow. You know, almost
I'm getting over.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's you know, everyone working together to you know, the greater good, or to get that story across. That's what I love. The psychology of wrestling and the storytelling is just what I'm addicted to, basically.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, I agree.
Yep. It's good stuff when it works.
And it does.
But trying to get that trust sometimes, you know, there's a lot of times where I've personally been one to not... I like to tell people the big picture, but not the whole picture. You know, so I don't like them to know all the twists and turns. So sometimes people might question it, and I don't want to give them too much information just in case, you know. But I've always been like that. People have gotten mad at me because, you know, I'm quote unquote kayfabing them. But it's about that story, you know. Sometimes to see their surprise when they see where they end up is just as fun as the audience.
Right.
And again, we're not dealing with made pros. You're dealing with people who want to become made pros. You're dealing with guys and girls who, you know, have an ambition to do something, and now you got to show them the way. There's wrestling school, there's spot shows. Now, okay, now you're in an angle. Now you're in a program. Now you're a pro wrestler. Now you got to go out and get over.
Right.
That's a different kettle of fish than just having a match in practice, or, you know, jobbing out to King Kong Bundy on some show, you know?
Right.
I mean, now you got to go out and get over. That's what pro wrestling is all about. You know, that's something that was sorely missing around here.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, sorely missing.
It absolutely was.
And the guys that got it, the guys and the girls that got it and became invested in it, became much better performers for doing so.
So, let me ask you this then. Who were you disappointed that didn't get there? In other words, was there anybody who didn't, that had the potential, you saw the potential in them, and they just, either they didn't do it, they quit, they walked away? Was there anybody that you saw that you thought you couldn't, that they weren't able to tap into their potential of what they had? Or they weren't around long enough to tap into that potential? Anybody who went on an injury, or anybody who, you know, for whatever reason, if maybe not to their own doing, just didn't go as far as you wanted them to go, or you thought they could go.
Boy, Scott Levesque tops that list. In his case, just a crisis of self-confidence. We talked about that a week or so ago. We did, yeah.
Yeah. Alex Arion was another one that you talked about.
Alex Arion, yeah. But Alex Arion was a different situation. Alex Arion had all the talent and all the ability, and just he came along at a time when, you know, they were looking for physically bigger individuals, and that held him back. But in his case, it wasn't for lack of talent. The other thing about Alex, though, is, you know, I could have gotten him overseas. He didn't want to go.
Right.
But, you know, that too might have been just, hey, I've got a job here. I can't leave. Or I have my life here and I don't want to be traveling all over the world. You know, I've got family, whatever. You know, I can't put myself in his shoes, but those are very valid reasons for not wanting to go do that. And there are some guys that just want to be weekend warriors.
Right.
They love wrestling, but they don't really want to do it as a career. They don't want to travel the country or the world. They just want to go home at night and spend time with their families, or they've got a job that they really like or they really excel at, and the level of commitment that they want to make only extends to a certain place. Another person that falls into that category is Brandon Locke.
Yep.
I think Brandon Locke was a guy that suffered for poor booking, which we've gone over in a previous episode. Maverick Wild is somebody that was never booked properly. That was Bob Evans. Did not book Maverick properly. He certainly had the potential to do much more. Kev, do you have any others that you can think of?
Sean Burke comes
Sean
to
Burke,
mind.
yes. Absolutely Sean Burke.
He got injured, correct?
He got injured,
Was that
and Sean was...
I think it was the tryouts that burnt him out.
He had a tryout that burnt him out. He who was the name?
I've heard that a lot about guys.
The story that I heard was he was an extra on a show that came through here, a WWE show that came through here. And who was the guy? Adam Rose, the one that had the
Oh yeah,
entourage.
Yep.
They had
Before-
Sean Burke dress up as a gay Viking, and he made a boo-boo face, and that was the end of him.
Oh,
In the eyes of the office. And then he went to Chikara and did that stupid Flex Rumble Nuts or whatever it was gimmick that they had him do. But no, Sean Burke certainly had all the talent. He certainly had the physical tools. And also a family guy too. Married, now with children. That becomes harder and harder to make that kind of commitment, especially where you're putting yourself at some sort of physical risk. Tough.
Jeremy Prophet's another one.
Oh, yeah. Jeremy Prophet, absolutely. Jeremy Prophet should be a big star. But, Jeremy is eccentric, had issues, a guy that couldn't get along with people. I love the guy. Kevin, I think you're with me. In that.
He was a mixed bag. He's one of those. I've always tried to approach the business as we don't have to get along perfectly if we can work together and make money. Right. And Jeremy Prophet was money. So as frustrating as he could be at times, he was worth the investment. I don't mind waiting 15 extra minutes as you walk through a promo because I know that what you're going to do in the ring after the promo is done is going to be worth it. I would definitely work with him again in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And I'm sure after I do, I'd probably get extremely frustrated, but I would continue to work with him.
That's life. That's wrestling. Some guys are like that. That's an interesting question. Belmont, I think, is another one. That should have had a bigger run somewhere. There's a lot.
Parleying with that now, who's the best kept secret in New England wrestling?
Ooh.
Who's the one person out there that you know of that by all means should be on television right now? In the middle of this pandemic, who from this area should they have grabbed and been on AEW or been in Impact right now or Ring of Honor? I'll go with Impact and AEW because they're the hot ones right now that were grabbing all the indie wrestlers that were out there.
Good question.
I'd say McCarthy.
See, I've been separated for a little while here, so me coming back into the mix, trying to know who some of the players are now, you guys are a little more in tune.
I think if it were 5 years ago, McCarthy, absolutely.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
Yeah. Brad Hollister is another one that I think has the potential to do big things.
I think Belmont could be in that mix right now, too.
She's been wrestling for a long time. She's been around for a lot of years. So I don't know about that. I think age might, and not that she's old by any stretch of the imagination, but interesting proposition there. But no, she definitely had talent. Had she been so inclined to travel around more and put herself in that situation, I think that she certainly could have had a bigger run. Absolutely.
To get herself in the physical shape that she did in the last few years was a testament to her hard work too. That was my main thing. I look at her and Alexxis Neveah, Alisha Edwards did the work that the two of them did, and we saw them and we talked about them in this series. I mean, I look at Lish and what she's doing right now, and I think Belmont could do the exact same. That's why I'm thinking she's one of those people, definitely seasoned enough where she could carry some of these younger girls out there and make them look good, if anything.
Right. I know that Sasha Banks, Mercedes, credits Belmont for being quite a help to her.
Yeah.
In the early stages of her career. There's a lot of girls that would say the same thing. Davienne,
Yeah, she's the gatekeeper. She's the one that, if you can't hang once you're in there with her, you're going to be exposed.
Right.
Or she's going to bring you up to her level. I guess that's a better way of wording it.
Yeah.
Right.
How about this? If there was one thing that you could change at one particular time with NECW, what would it be?
I never would have let Bob Evans anywhere near a book. Had I had that, that's only an 18-month period in the history of NECW, but had that period been taken more seriously by whoever was in that position, it might have changed the whole trajectory of things. I mean,
Interesting.
It all worked out for the best, but it was a colossal waste of 18 months of my life. Something I had to go through to get to a better place, but nonetheless a colossal waste of time and money.
I can identify with that for a lot of things. Time and money, yes. Right. But you have to do it to get to where you got to go.
There's folks that we've used over the years that I would have liked to have used more, that I would have liked to have kept. Fergal being one. David Finlay, who you're going to see, we talked about him last week. He's going to be the subject of a bonus match in the coming weeks. Him and Mike McCarthy. Great kid. Really a great kid and a talented kid. And I'm sure he's gotten 10 times better since he's been living in Japan and wrestling for New Japan and training in their dojo. Doug Williams, of course, is another guy, first-class talent. There's lots of folks that we've had over the years that, I wish I had a couple of years with Beth Phoenix. She was terrific. It's funny, getting back to what we were saying before, who, should have been on TV now, or had her timing been different. Ariel.
Yeah. You look at the timing of the women in NECW and Triple W, and compared to where miles ahead of where they were at the time. But again, it's also the format that you gave them. You gave them a stage to do it where nobody would.
And it was 10
nobody
years
really
too soon.
Did.
We were doing it 10 years before it was hip to do that.
It was hip to do that, exactly. And any one of those girls could be hanging right now at that time.
Yep. Well, not any one of them, but a lot of them. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yes, you're right.
Taylor Hendricks is another one that didn't really live up to the potential that she had, although she did have a national run with Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
She did some stuff with Impact. She's a girl that I thought could have gotten a lot further.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I really thought she had a lot of talent. She had a good look. Yeah. She worked very well. And I wonder why it didn't go as far as you would have thought they would have.
She left the area and she trained with Rip Rogers out in OVW, and that did her a world of good. Sometimes you got to let people go. Mercedes Martinez was another situation where Bob Evans hated her and didn't want to use her, and just the situation, the talent pool locally. I mean, she needed to go someplace else to get to a better place. And as much as I hated to not use her, it was the best thing for her.
That's it. You got to go out of your comfort zone.
Yeah. You got to go where people are going to put you in a situation where you're going to be able to improve.
Right.
And where you're going to be able to work above your level. And that wasn't going to happen around here for her, unfortunately. Although I did miss her when we really got Real Women's Wrestling started in earnest. The initial big program that we did between Nikki Rocks and Ariel, and while Ariel's great, I think to have that initial program between Nikki Rocks and Mercedes Martinez would have been even better.
Oh, yeah.
With Martinez in the heel position, being the woman scorned, who should have been the one that everything was put behind and felt left behind because of it. I think that would have been a phenomenal program, and I think it would have done well, but it was not to be, unfortunately. But she went on a journey that ended up very rewarding for her. It was tough. She suffered injuries. She, went through a lot of hardship to get where she is now. But, she earned her stripes. She absolutely earned her stripes all over the world. She's wrestled everywhere. Right. I don't think she would have had that opportunity had she not taken the path that she did. That's a situation where somebody not working with us worked out better for them. It's another thing. I wish that we had been involved with people who were like-minded as far as women's wrestling goes. I don't think the PWF crew really appreciated what we were trying to do with the girls. They certainly didn't want to put the resources behind it to make it successful. They didn't want to put the resources behind it to make the guys successful, let alone the women.
Right.
But that was a missed opportunity. Very hard to run two promotions, but we had a great start with PR. We had people that wanted to get involved in it from outside of us. It was such a sensation when we started it locally. So much media, so many eyes on it, and we didn't really capitalize on it the way we could have, unfortunately. But you live and learn. Right.
Is there anyone that you wish that you had gotten in, that you were trying to get into the promotion to come in? Anybody that you saw out there? Like we had talked earlier off screen about you had the opportunity to possibly bring in, it was CM Punk at one point,
right,
very early in his career. And is there somebody like that that you can think of? You're right, in Colt Cabana, who did come in. Mm-hmm. You did have Colt in, but is there anyone that you think about that? Oh man, I was so close, almost had that person here, and man, could have done good business with them.
MJF.
Oh, you had the opportunity to bring him in at the time.
That was actually he was scheduled for the Iron 8 in 2017. Right. That didn't happen.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yep.
That was right as he began too.
And I was a little reluctant with him because he had been doing stuff for Chaotic.
Gotcha.
And I didn't want to bring in a guy that had any kind of relationship with Chaotic. It's funny. One of the regrets that I had with NECW in terms of the booking and the talent and so forth, I think that during the Quincy years especially, we relied too much on people out of Chaotic.
Yeah.
And in many cases, we used them better than Chaotic did. Mm-hmm. Max Bauer would be a perfect case in point.
Sure.
He certainly didn't get the push with Chaotic that he got with us. But, the problem is that all those folks were putting Chaotic first. It didn't matter what we did for them. It didn't matter what we were giving them. It didn't matter how we were putting them over. None of that mattered. They were Chaotic guys, dyed in the wool. And that's partly because, Jamie had this relationship with WWE. At one time, they were, quote, official scouts, whatever that means. They were providing extras. A lot of that's bullshit, because you could get in as an extra without going through Jamie, that's for sure.
Right. Right.
They had some successes with people that got plucked out of the school that, went on to do big things with them. Kofi being one, Sasha being another. They've sent people on to the big leagues, and they would hold that carrot out to people saying, well, we can get you looked at. We can get you this. We can get you that. A lot of that to me is a bunch of hoo-ha.
At the same time that was going on, Sparta was running camps with Dr. Tom Pritchard, who was head of talent relations. Mm-hmm. So he'd come in and work a camp with everybody. And I mean, it was, and you wouldn't believe how many of the chaotic guys were showing up.
Oh yeah,
at Sparta's, walking right away from Jamie just to have and they were paying to work the camp. Exactly.
Those chaotic, they had no loyalty to anybody.
No. I know Aaron Stevens got his shot because of Dr. Tom and going through those camps. It wasn't through chaotic.
Right. A lot of people don't know this, but Jamie Jam It Up Yurkowski, his family business, family business. I've got a family business, and I'm so lucky. I've got a family business. His family business was a company, I don't know if it's even still in business, but it's a company called Undercoverwear, which is kind of like a Fredericks of Hollywood. They sell, negligees and sex toys, and they had a warehouse where some of the chaotic guys would go to work. In fact, Handsome Johnny used to joke about boxing dildos.
I thought he was a wrestler.
Yeah, right. But
you work for one and you throw one in a box.
Yeah, they were just so ridiculous. And I don't begrudge them anything. I don't begrudge. I'm not going to tell you that chaotic wrestling sucks, because that wouldn't be accurate. They did do a lot of good things. They did have a school. They produced a lot of good people, but they weren't the be all and end all. I mean, if you compare, we've put this series out there, and I think that holds up to anything anybody else ever did in New England.
Yeah.
So,
I agree.
I don't, chaotic for the longest time were obsessed with us. One time they asked me to come up to the school. They wanted to talk to me. Sonny Goodspeed was the matchmaker at the time. So I brought Sonny with me. We go up to their school, and it's a pretty impressive deal. They got 2 rings, and they've got an office, and it's a well laid out deal. Obviously, some money was spent there, and we're standing around, and they used to have a little lobby in the front with a TV where they would sit and watch tapes and over there and stuff. So I go over and I look at the tapes that are sitting underneath. This was before DVDs. All the tapes were NECW shows. Every last one of them were NECW shows. It's like these guys. Jamie in interviews has said he had never seen an independent show before he got involved in this. It's like I say. I like Law and Order. I love that show, Law and Order. But after I watch the show, I don't think that I can get up off my couch, grab a badge and a gun, and go out and arrest people. What makes you think that you can? And obviously, they made tons of mistakes. We're not immune from that either. We made mistakes too. I readily admit that. But at least I was around wrestling for 10 years before I promoted a show.
Right.
These guys, how difficult could it be? We're just going to go out and do this. Well, this guy we'll hire all these guys. They put people into these ridiculous contracts where they're paying $20 wrestlers $100, thinking they're going to draw 5 times the money. No, it doesn't work like that. Sorry.
No.
Oh, we're going to put you out of business. Yeah, right.
Well, look how well that happened. That worked out for him, right?
Yeah. But they ruin friendships. They set people up against you.
Yeah.
A lot of guys think that, if they think they're going to get over on you, it doesn't matter how friendly they are with you. Money and ego change people, unfortunately. I don't know Jamie well enough to hate him, and he certainly doesn't know me well enough. So, I just don't get it. It's a waste of time.
Right.
And it's too bad, because had they approached us the right way, had there been a collaboration there, I mean, things might have been much, much different for them. You know, the resources would have existed to do something very substantial. But, you know, egos get in the way of stuff like that, unfortunately.
Yeah. What about when big time wrestling showed up on the scene?
Because
all of a sudden they just came out of nowhere with television, and they were bringing in guys like Roddy Piper and Ric Flair, and I mean, they were dropping tens of thousands of dollars on talent.
Right, but they weren't really affecting anything that we were doing. You know,
but I'm sorry, totally as far as bringing in guys, the local talent, to work on these shows with their television and all that.
Well, Flair's people reached out to us before too.
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
we had Flair. We had Jose Canseco, which was one of my favorite emails.
Really?
Yeah, right.
Oh, Jose Canseco. Was that after he did the
yes.
fight? The celebrity boxing.
The amount of money that they were looking for and
what
he was willing to do was hilarious.
Yeah, but like you say, they were a different business model altogether, and I don't begrudge them anything. I don't, you know. Their business model is just different from ours. I actually have a fair amount of respect for them. No, I'm not a fan of Terry Allen at all. He's another one. When they booked the Quincy Armory and brought in Roddy Piper, and Pat Piper was a regular for us. They put on their posters, the real Roddy Piper.
Right, exactly.
You know, he sends me, if you want to meet Roddy Piper, come down and buy a ticket. I said, I don't need to buy it. I've already met Roddy Piper.
Right, exactly. And as far as Roddy and Pat go, when
I didn't
Pat
have to
was
pay
inducted,
him stupid money to meet him either. So.
Right. When Pat was inducted into the Hall of Fame here in New England, when he ran into Roddy again, he had it with him, and Roddy signed his Hall of Fame plaque that he got from the New England Hall of Fame.
Wow.
And two Hall of Famers got in a great picture with each other. Roddy was very proud of what Pat did with the gimmick, and he hated people that imitated him.
Right,
hated them, but he loved what Pat did. And he had a soft spot for Pat. And I'm dying to see Pat's another whole story too. We could get into one night, but I'm dying to see what happens with that documentary that they're doing on Roddy.
Yes.
From the last show that we did in Randolph, they were the film crew was there and interviewed Pat extensively that night for that documentary. And Roddy's daughter is the one that's pushing that and running that, and she's the one who reached out to Pat to bring him in on it, which was pretty cool. That after all that time, Pat's been on so many of those DVDs and scenes for that one spot that he did.
Yeah.
So, a couple spots that he did for them, but yeah.
All right, well, I'll tell you what. Let's take a break right here and take a look at our bonus match. We're going to, once again, go back to July 7th, 2015. Alexxis Neveah taking on Sonya Strong in a very unique matchup. Let's take a look at that, and then we'll talk about it on the other side. Let's get ready to turn it over to our ring announcer, Chris Norman, with the introductions to this feature matchup.
This match is set for one fall with a 15-minute time limit. Your referee is Jim Dobrik. Introducing first, from the Bronx, New York, Sonya Strong.
The highly touted Sonya Strong making her debut. Sonya being greeted by a Yankee suck chant.
And her opponent from New Bedford, Massachusetts, Alexxis Neveah.
Alexxis Neveah, former Triple W champion, the longest reigning champion, male or female, in NECW history. Referee calls for the bell. Here we go. This should be an interesting matchup. Sonya Strong with a bit of a size advantage over Alexxis Neveah. And here we go. Sonya Strong takes her down. Goes for a quick pin, but nothing doing. Sonya Strong, a little trash talk there on Alexxis Neveah. Alexxis now goes behind. Spanks her right in the rear end. Some mind games being played by both women in the early going in this feature matchup. Collar and elbow tie-up. Alexxis grabs the arm, winds her up. Sonya Strong rolls through, kips up, and reverses on Alexxis Neveah. Alexxis reverses again into a headlock. Nice headlock takeover by the former Triple W champion. Both of these women will be featured in the 2016 Iron Maiden Championship. Sonya Strong, a nice head scissors reversal on the former Triple W champion. Alexxis now trying to work her way out of it as she rolls over. Alexxis pops out of it and reverses on Sonya Strong. Fans, what a night it is going to be. Saturday night, August 13th. Wakefield, Massachusetts, the AmeriCal Civic Center. For the first time ever, 8 women will compete in the ultimate test of skill, stamina, and strategy. The 2016 Iron Maiden Championship. Sonya Strong takes Alexxis down again, gets a 1 count. Alexxis holding her lip. Things might be getting a little bit rough in there between these two. Alexxis. Oh, big chop right there. Sonya Strong has to take a seat. Here comes Alexxis. But Sonya rolls out.
In my face. There's way too much going on here.
Sonya Strong a little bit flustered by what's going on in this matchup.
My chest is red.
A physical update there from Sonya Strong.
Can you please get her back? I'm gonna come inside. Get up in there, come on.
Sonya Strong asking the referee to get Alexxis Neveah back.
Trying to do the woman thing, like, come on.
Alexxis encouraging a chicken chant for Sonya Strong.
Give it to her.
I'm so nice. Actually, I'm so nice. Actually, I'll shake your hand.
Alexxis offers to shake the hands of her opponent, Sonya Strong. Oh, man. Sonya grabbed the hair and just dropped Alexxis right to the canvas. Sonya standing on the hair of Alexxis Neveah. And this situation is starting to boil. Sonya Strong with a blatant choke on Alexxis Neveah. And it's Sonya Strong in control, sending Alexxis face first into the top turnbuckle. Rubbing her face in that middle turnbuckle. And Sonya Strong is starting to dig in here. Big chop by Sonya. Oh man, another big blistering chop. And now Alexxis is going to give her some of her own medicine. Alexxis looking for approval from the crowd. But Sonya Strong pokes the eyes. took too long right there. Sonya now stomps away on the chest of the former Triple W champion. A boot to the back. Sonya Strong snapmares Alexxis over. Big kick right between the shoulder blades and right in the face. Sonya Strong is unloading with those kicks. Right to the temple and a cover right here. Only two. These two women mean business here. Sonya Strong does not want to lose in her Triple W debut. Big chop again by Sonya Strong. Kick to the rib cage. Alexxis reverses now. Sonya Strong draped across that middle rope. Here comes Alexxis. Down across the throat of Sonya Strong. Big kick to the midsection. And a kick to the temple. Alexxis giving it right back to Sonya Strong. Standing senton drop, 2 count only. Hard-hitting action in this World Women's Wrestling feature matchup. Alexxis backing Sonya Strong up in the corner and a big forearm. Sends Sonya slumping down to the canvas. Alexxis looks like she's winding up here. Face first into the buckle, nobody home. Sonya Strong now charging in. Kick right across the face. Sonya dragging Alexxis out by the feet. Floats over. Pin attempt and a 2 count only. What a hard-hitting, competitive matchup between these two great female competitors. Sonya Strong has Alexxis up. Full body slam down to the canvas. Sonya rolls her over. Big elbow right to the midsection. Trying to knock the wind out of the former Triple W champion. Sonya brings Alexxis up by the hair. Sonya setting her up. Leg scissors choke. This could be a submission right here. Alexxis leans back. Gets a 2 count on Sonya Strong. Alexxis trying to figure her way out of it as Sonya Strong continues to apply the pressure. Legs coming loose here. Alexxis is now out of the hold, but Sonya Strong still in control. Off the ropes goes Alexxis. Clothesline misses. Alexxis now runs right into a boot. Nice crescent kick by Sonya Strong. Spinning kick. Nails Alexxis and a cover right here. Only 2. They don't call this girl Sonya Strong for nothing. Sonya Strong now with forearms. Alexxis ducks now, has her by the neck. Drops her face first. And a cover. There's a 3 count right there. A hard-fought victory for Alexxis Neveah as she sits on the face of Sonya Strong. This was a heated battle between two fierce competitors, and the victory goes to Alexxis Neveah. you can bet Sonya Strong is going to be heard from again. We're going to be seeing her as well on Saturday night, August 13th.
She's gross. That's disgusting. That's not even sanitary.
Sonya Strong complaining, and perhaps rightfully so, about her post-match treatment by Alexxis Neveah. And here comes Alexxis again. Oh, stink face! Stink face on Sonya Strong. Talk about rubbing it in. Alexxis Neveah looking for a microphone. Let's stay with this here.
Sonya Strong, you came all the way from New York for the biggest ass wipe of your life.
Oh my goodness.
See, I live very close to Brockton, so I know how we do it down here, right? We like to keep it classy, and we also like to throw down wherever and whenever. So, I'm going to be really classy right now, because I'm just in a really good mood since I just beat you. 1, 2, 3.
Oh my goodness.
Here we go. You're going to shake my hand into respect for women's wrestling. So, get your ass up and shake my hand.
Alexxis Neveah telling Sonya Strong to get up and shake her hand. Alexxis telling Sonya Strong to respect women's wrestling. Sonya coming out and
Women's wrestling.
handshake right here. Oh, wait a minute, Sonya. Oh, wait a minute, this isn't over yet. This is not over yet. It's breaking down right now. Sonya Strong going to work down on Alexxis Neveah. Sonya Strong trying to get some payback. General Manager Paul Richard is out. Mike Bernansky's out. Referee Barbara Mahoney in the ring. Here comes Dan Terry. The action in this matchup getting out of hand at points.
So you're going to do it how they do it down in New York? Where you have absolutely no class? That's right. That's right. Guess what, Miss Strong? Guess what, Miss Strong? Mercy? You didn't win the match. This is
Come on. You're unsanitary, and there's nothing classy about you. You put your ass in my face.
I'll meet you somewhere, and it'll be real, okay? I'll fight one-on-one, me versus you. Boston, listen, Boston versus New York. I'll meet you somewhere.
Goodness gracious. Oh, wait a minute, Alexxis is running back into the ring. Officials trying to separate these two, but these two want to continue to go at it. These two could end up facing each other again on Saturday night, August 13th. They are not scheduled to face each other in the opening round, but should both women advance, they would collide again. Folks, if you were looking for a reason to see the 2016 Iron 8 Championship, there are two reasons right there. Well, Richard escorting Alexxis Neveah to the back.
Alexxis, I have the mic now, and I know you can hear me. I'm going to see you very soon. It's more like August 13th, I believe.
That's correct. Oh my goodness. Sonya just threw water at Alexxis Neveah. That's not going to do anything to cool down the situation. This is unbelievable. Sonya Strong heads to the back.
That's okay. We all know what's coming up next. Triple W has the next Iron 8 women fighting for what's truly Alexxis' anyways, that Triple W championship. And Miss Strong, I know you're in the Iron 8, and I'll tell you something. It will come down to me versus your skinky ass.
Wow. Folks, we're going to get out of here on that unhappy note. We'll see you next time on New England Championship Wrestling. All righty. Is this not the darndest thing you have ever seen in a match between two women? Joe, let's start with you. You weren't around for this, so...
I was not. I'm very familiar with the Brockton Fair,
right,
and the Brockton Fairgrounds and the people that were there. And this was something you would see probably over by the dunk tank. That would have happened at any given time during the fair. But it was perfectly placed for what they did. I love the pacing of the beginning of the match was excellent. How everything was just kind of building up, and Alexxis was making it like we're just having a little bit of fun here, and Sonya was pulling the New York attitude and all, so it was perfect. And some really good chain wrestling. They really, right in the beginning, they were really getting in, and the story was being laid out, and the frustration was coming out, and you started to see it. And I'll tell you what, when Alexxis was sitting down between the front and the back kicks, they were snug and borderline stiff, some of those shots that she was taking.
Oh, yeah.
And, but man, it was good. And then when Alexxis got on the stick at the end of the match, that's the fire that needs to be brought out of her. She needs that. When she gets going and she gets all New Bedford on you, that's when it is. She lights that up, and right. It is not only good, it's believable. And she was hot. I was like, oh my God, she is going to kill somebody. And her and Sonya jumping at each other and having to be broken up and running around. That crowd was in a frenzy.
Oh, yeah.
Two girls going at it, and I'll tell you what, that was one of the better pull-aparts I've seen in a while with girls and guys. Because they looked like they were really laying it in, and it was awesome. It was awesome to see, and a good lead up to the Iron Maiden coming up.
Right, and it's funny. We talked about this last week. That little girl that started out with us, who never wanted to cut a promo, would run the other way when somebody came around with a mic. For her to do what she did, and the evolution of her as a talent. You see it right there.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely incredible.
And you know what's funny is I was around when she was first trying to cut the promos, and I was backstage with her a few times, and I don't know if I've ever told you this, but there was one person that helped really pull it out of her to get that fire and really get the intensity, and that was Nick Steele. And we just lost Nick, a year ago?
Right.
And it's a shame. He was a great guy, excellent trainer and teacher. But he knew her for a long time, and he was able to tap in, and just some of the things he'd say to her, and it really helped pull it out. And that's a testament right there. Some 5 years, 6 years later, of what she was able to pull off by honing her craft. Man, she was good.
Yeah,
We need that Lish to come back. That girl needs right now. Impact could really use that right now with her.
Now, Kevin, you knew Lish way back when.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Before she even started to compete in the ring, because her mom was always around the shows. So, like the Lish that I met was a very young Lish, and then just seeing, like you were saying, the transformation. There was we were doing a show in Fairhaven, that she was booked on, and the other girl didn't show up. So it was one of those, we need to fill something in last minute. So I came up with the idea, all right, we'll have her go out there, or I'll go out, I'll say that, her opponent's not there, and she can pick anybody she wants in the locker room. She cut a promo, it was a good promo, about how there's one particular bitch that works for the company that she can't wait to get her hands on because, they've never faced each other. And, that bitch is you, and she points right at me. So, we had I don't really want to call it a match, but she proceeded to kick my ass for the next 15 minutes. During this 15 minutes, at one point, we're on the outside of the ring, she throws me into a stack of chairs. So, I hit the chairs, go right through them, and next thing I know, there was a chair flying at me, followed by another chair flying at me. So now, I'm on the ground pulling chairs on top of me to save my life from these chairs. So, at this point, I think, wouldn't it be funny? Because these aren't folding chairs. These are like a banquet type chair.
Okay.
So I thought it would be funny if I get up with one of the chairs around my neck, which looked hilarious. She takes me and runs me into the post, which normal type of bump, but when you have a chair on your head, the chair hits, which then launches it back into your face.
Oh man!
But anyways, that's one of the Lish stories that I can think of. Another one, she hit me with the forearm that was so hard I thought she broke my jaw.
Oops.
But yeah, no, she's snug. She's she lays it in. But seeing that transformation of just like the ring girl to becoming a star is fascinating.
Yeah.
And rewarding to see.
Cool.
Absolutely. Now, it's funny because when I watched this match, it had been a while since I had seen it. I was there for it, but I especially an event like the Brockton Fair, I know that I was filming promos that we could not use because the cameraman, even though he was told repeatedly to wear headphones, finally wore the headphones but neglected to plug them in. So he was not aware that the sound was not being recorded for the promos.
And it wasn't Anthony.
No, it was not Anthony. So I saw the tail end.
Would you have Harley race there? No audio. Great.
So as I'm watching this, at one point it turned into the JFK assassination tapes for me. Because there was something that I saw that I had to keep going back, trying to figure out what just happened. So as the match is going on, towards somewhat the beginning of it, Sonya's in the corner. The referee is relatively close to her. Lish starts running at her, and Sonya tells the referee to stop. And everything sort of came to like an awkward halt, and then picked right back up. And I was like, oh, that was weird. So I tried to go back to see what it was. I couldn't figure it out, but everything from that point on, shit got real. Because that's when the kicks became stiffer, the punches became a lot more snug, the stink face at the end of the match was a little rough. So I don't know what happened during the match, but it definitely took a turn into, we'll say, more of a fight than a match.
Right.
And I still don't know what the cause of it was.
Neither do I, but it's fascinating to watch.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
60,000 people, or close to 60,000 people, feel the same way because that's how many views this thing got.
It would be fun to get Lish on and find out exactly what happened.
Oh, that's something we can work on. Well, we are coming down to time here, folks. So I want to once again wish every one of you who is listening and who's been listening to us a wonderful holiday, whatever and however you celebrate. Thank you for being a fan of New England Championship Wrestling. Thank you for listening to the Regeneration Podcast. Don't forget to send us your questions. We want to know what you want to know. send it to regenerationnecw@gmail.com. And that is going to do it for us this week. For Joe Matterazzo and Kevin Castro, I'm Sheldon Goldberg. Thank you again for listening. We'll see you next time.
The Regeneration Podcast is a production of New England Championship Wrestling. To send us questions, comments, or feedback, email us at regenerationnecw@gmail.com.